I learned about the family reunion from a photograph online. My granddaughter was standing in front of a rented pavilion, holding a paper plate bigger than her face. Behind her were folding tables, balloons, coolers, cousins, in-laws, neighbors. My son was near the grill, smiling at someone outside the frame, and my daughter-in-law, Rebecca, stood in the center of it all like a woman satisfied with her arrangements. I looked at the picture longer than I should have. At first, I thought maybe it had been spontaneous. Then I noticed the matching shirts, the printed banner, weeks of planning. Nobody had forgotten to invite me. I put my phone down and sat quietly at the kitchen table. What surprised me most wasn't the hurt. It was the absence of shock. Some part of me had already known I was becoming optional. After my husband died, the balance inside the family shifted slowly enough that I kept excusing it. Rebecca started making decisions before asking questions. My son started avoiding difficult conversations altogether. I became someone they discussed instead of someone they included. You should downsize eventually. You don't need all that house alone. It'd be easier closer to us. Closer to them always sounded less like love and more like supervision. The reunion photo finally settled something in me. A few months later, I sold the family home. I didn't tell anyone until the paperwork was finished. The new place sat near the county line in a quiet neighborhood, with older trees and cracked sidewalks. It wasn't large, but it was mine. 2 bedrooms, a screened porch, a narrow kitchen with 2 little cabinet space. The first night there felt strange. Not triumphant, just unfamiliar. I remember standing in the hallway surrounded by unopened boxes, thinking about how adulthood keeps asking people to rebuild themselves long after they're tired of construction. For a while, nobody visited. Then Rebecca started calling again. At first, her voice carried that careful softness people use when they want something without sounding like they want it. How's the neighborhood? That area is getting expensive. You should really think about long-term planning now. Long-term planning, estate planning value. The conversation slowly stopped sounding personal. My husband had left behind a few unresolved business assets, connected to our old property investments. Nothing enormous, but enough that my ownership still mattered. Rebecca had spent years assuming everything would eventually pass, quietly into my son's control because I hated conflict more than inconvenience. What she never understood was that silence and agreement are not the same thing. The first unannounced visit happened on a Thursday afternoon. From the grocery store and found Rebecca walking along the side fence, peering toward the backyard. "Oh, good," she said casually. "I was just curious about the property lines." Curious. A week later, she arrived with a contractor to discuss future accessibility improvements I had never requested. That was when I hired a lawyer. Martin looked exactly like the kind of attorney people trust with uncomfortable truths. Calm eyes, gray suit, no dramatic reactions. He listened while I explained the situation, then asked questions nobody else had asked me. "Has anyone attempted to pressure you regarding ownership? Have these visits been documented? Do you feel intimidated?" The word intimidated made me uncomfortable because it sounded too serious for family behavior, but pressure can exist without shouting. Control can happen politely. Martin advised cameras after the 3rd surprise visit. "People behave differently when records exist," he said. So I installed cameras around the property. Motion alerts, cloud storage, quiet protections. I never mentioned any of it to my son. Part of me still wanted to believe he wasn't fully aware of what Rebecca was doing. Then came the assessor. Rebecca texted that morning, stopping by with someone who can help estimate current property value. Important information for the family. I stared at the message for a long time before calling Martin. "Don't cancel," he told me calmly. "I'll be there." Rebecca arrived just after noon with a man carrying a clipboard and measuring equipment. My son followed behind them, looking uneasy already. Rebecca stepped onto the porch, speaking before I could. "This won't take long," she said. "We're just gathering information." The assessor gave me a small nod. The kind professionals give when they realize they may have entered something more personal than advertised. Then another vehicle pulled into the driveway. County deputy. No sirens, no dramatic entrance. Just a uniformed man stepping out calmly and adjusting his belt as he approached the porch. Rebecca's entire posture changed. The deputy spoke politely. "Afternoon. We received a request to remain present during a property access discussion." Before Rebecca could respond, Martin arrived carrying a leather folder under one arm. He greeted me first. That mattered more than I expected. The next 10 minutes were painfully civilized. Martin clarified that no property assessment had been authorized by the homeowner. He clarified that future unannounced visits could legally qualify as harassment if they continued after formal notice. He clarified that all interactions on the property had been documented. The deputy mostly stayed silent beside the porch railing. But authority does not need volume to shift a room. Rebecca tried to recover control halfway through. "We're only trying to help her," she said tightly. Martin nodded once, then respecting boundaries should not be difficult. No yelling followed, no emotional explosion. That seemed to frustrate Rebecca most of all. There was nothing messy enough to manipulate. My son finally looked at me. "Mom," he asked quietly, "why didn't you say something sooner?" I almost answered honestly, because every time I tried, everyone treated my discomfort like confusion. Instead, I said, "I think I finally learned to say it correctly." Nobody spoke after that. The assessor left first. Rebecca followed him toward the driveway with tight shoulders and quick steps. My sons hesitated beside the porch for a moment before leaving too. That evening, the house felt deeply quiet. Not lonely, protected, and for the first time in years. I understood that dignity sometimes begins the moment you stop asking people for permission to keep it.